It is the People Show. Randeep and Bick here with you. Sat and Dan, they're enjoying a couple days off, which they deserve. Right? I think we deserve it as well. Dan's been really gloating the last couple of days about the Italy victory.
Yeah.
You and I both needed a break from Dan.
Yeah. Pretty sure you're taking some time off soon.
Yeah, I'm going to be gone for a little bit more than 2 days.
Pretty sure I'm taking some time off
Exactly.
soon.
I have to get the preemptive strike in because
Yes,
I know
of
they're going to
course.
trash me when I take some time off. So,
Although, shouldn't we aspire to more? If we don't trash them, they don't trash us.
yeah, but that's no fun, Bick. That's not fun.
I don't.
There
like,
are boys, though.
I don't like getting trashed, is what I'm saying, Randy.
You're a good guy. You won't get trashed. I don't think so.
I work with CMAC, so nobody trashes me.
No. You're paying your dues, my friend.
I'm immune from getting trashed.
No, you're working with the boss. It's a win, I guess, because you're working with the boss, but also at the same time, you're working with the boss.
Oh, yeah.
But for the next 2 days, you got Bick and I, we're going to be making sure we take control of this before the expansion draft deadline, which is happening shy of 48 hours here in Vancouver, across the NHL. And the news of the last hour, the New Jersey Devils doing something creative here, being aggressive, adding to their protection list, going after highly sought-after defenseman Ryan Graves of the Colorado Avalanche in exchange for Mikhail Maltsev and a second-round pick in the 2021 draft. And this is where, go back to that Victor Arvidsson deal. LA gets him for a second and a third. Now you have this deal. Those prices, to me, anyways, seem pretty reasonable for some high-impact players, potentially high-impact players.
Yeah, I think some of us coming into the expansion draft thought, second-round picks is kind of where you should be able to get guys at. Third-round picks, somewhere in that range. And now we're starting to see two assets to acquire one guy that might be on a protection list bubble. Now, some teams have more qualified players than others, and Ryan Graves certainly been a stalwart for Colorado for the last couple of years, paired next to Cale Makar. And
that helps.
That helps. That absolutely helps. However, look, he's played very well defensively, earned his paycheck, and earned his standing across the league. And so that's why the New Jersey Devils targeted him to bring him in. And Colorado's in a pinch here.
The expectation or the want in this market is, okay, Vancouver Canucks, pull off a move like that. Go after somebody that is going to be, picked in the expansion draft, and a team doesn't want to lose him for free. The question I have is, how many of these moves are available? Because with Colorado, it was obvious that Ryan Graves was going to be selected. And there was, the drop-off from Ryan Graves to JT Compher is a big one.
Yes.
And Colorado probably sees Compher to a certain degree as expendable anyways. How many teams actually have that sort of scenario where you're saying, okay, this guy's good, and if we let him go for free, we're taking the L on that? I don't think there's that many situations like that.
Across the league?
Yeah. Colorado was obvious that they were going to lose this guy.
I mean, Tampa's obviously going to be one. Toronto might be one with Kerfoot and Travis Dermott. Philadelphia. Yeah,
there's 4 or 5.
There's some, right? It's not as if Seattle's getting first-line centers, right? They're getting 9th or 10th best assets on teams, and hopefully you form enough that you got something. It's similar to the conversations we had prior to Vegas having any sort of success. Thought, it's going to take 2-3 years, and our perceptions have shifted a bit, but it's how the teams play it. And now they're trading amongst each other, which was always what you should have done back then prior to Vegas. Don't make the side deal. That's the hand in the cookie jar. That's the thing you shouldn't be doing, making the trades with Seattle. The equation is this. So each team can protect up to 11. There's 30 teams.
Yeah.
That's 330 players that can get protected. Realistically, it's 350 because of the UFAs and everything. The goal should be, how do we protect the 350 best assets? You trade with each other and you sort that bid out. And you give Seattle the worst pieces of the bunch. That should be the goal. They didn't know that lesson against Vegas. Hopefully that lesson gets learned now.
Yeah, it feels like the mantra was, hey, this team is new. Let's help them out. We hate each other. We don't want to do deals amongst ourselves because...
I don't even know if it was that. I think it was more just... we overvalue what we can protect, and I don't want to help my competitors. And so here's a team with cap space. I can jettison one problem that wasn't actually a problem like your Marchessaults, your Tucks, your Shea
Karlsson.
Theodores, whoever
Yeah.
it was. Let's get rid of this problem, and they'll take another problem, and suddenly my problem is solved. No. The problem you're trying to solve here is how do we protect the best 330 players? You kind of have to work together
Yeah.
in a rare moment, but hubris and ego and relationships that have been frayed. You don't want to deal with this team. All that comes into play, and Vegas was the beneficiary of that. Feels like Seattle might not be.
Yeah, and there's also got to be the element of, hey, I might lose this trade because I'm losing the best player, but in the short term, I'm going to be okay. In the long term, I'm going to be better off because I'm getting picks, I'm getting a prospect. But back then, they didn't maybe have that mentality. Is like, I can't lose a trade. I can't lose a trade to that team, whereas let's deal with the new team.
And from Colorado's perspective in this trade, okay, you're losing Ryan Graves.
Good player.
It is a blow, but you get a second-round pick and you get a prospect. Now, if you're sitting there and you're Colorado, you've got New Jersey's second-round pick, which is a pretty good pick. I think, what was it, 41st overall? Somewhere around that range?
I think 61st.
61st.
Yeah.
Was it second-round pick? Yeah. Okay.
It's originally from the New York Islanders.
Oh, okay.
From the previous deal. So the 61st pick.
No matter what. So you're sitting in a scenario where you now got two assets. Can you then, in turn, use one of those pieces, whether it's Maltsev or that second-round pick, and say, how do I replace Ryan Graves? Because the second-round pick still has value come next Thursday. Or also, do we go bring in a Ryan Suter in a week's time and say he replaces Ryan Graves, and we still got the second-round asset to replace JT Compher in a week's time? And that's why I kind of look at that two-asset thing. That might be how these teams approach it for those bubble protection lists.
Yeah, and before we start crying for the Colorado Avalanche, here's their back end heading into next year. Cale Makar, Taves, Samuel Girard, Bowen Byram, Eric Johnson, and then fill in the blank. If Johnson's still on the team, to your point, it might be Suter. It could be somebody else.
I would assume Johnson's not going to get selected.
Yeah, unless there's a side deal, which would defeat the purpose yet again. So Colorado will be fine, even if in the short term they lose this deal because they lose a good player. They're setting up that next move. The Arvidsson deal is kind of the same.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Nashville gets a second and a third round pick. They get rid of a player that would have been going to Seattle anyways. What can the Canucks learn from these deals?
Well, I was just going to ask, like, those two trades feel like protection list trades. Sorry, protection list trades, not protection lists. Do the Canucks have to do a hockey trade to try to reshape what their protection list looks like? For instance, like, what if Nate Schmidt had to go out and you get another D-man in and say another piece and suddenly Cole Lind gets exposed? And then do you have to make another trade to a protection style trade to then improve on Yul Levy? Is that something that you would approach? So where Schmidt goes out and you get two pieces in return, a replacement for Schmidt and a better seventh forward.
There's going to be, see, I love the idea of creative moves.
Sure, but this is the conversation, because like they have to have some form of creative move. Holtby going out, retain salary, like some level of creativity is necessary for the Vancouver Canucks.
TikTok. Like, you're going to have to act here. And you mentioned a name earlier on, which it's not a creative move, it's a straight up move. But now you start going through some of those teams that you listed. In Toronto, Alex Kerfoot, he's not a center with heft. He's a speedy one. But like, if he's the example, and there's other ones as well, right? Tampa Bay is one that you mentioned. So if you're looking in a different direction, not named Tyler Johnson, but you're saying, is there another way we can, maybe target that team? They're going to have to be models like kind of like this deal where futures are going to be up for it. So that second round pick to me is I see a more of a conventional deal coming up here, because that time, that clock is ticking. And let's be honest, the Canucks have not been the most creative when it comes to their trade history. We can say Nate Schmidt was a creative trade, but not really. They got a asset at a lower value. I don't think that's a creative trade.
Very reduced price. And by the way, it wasn't creative through their ingenuity. It fell into their lap.
Yes. And it's going to be the same with whenever New York trades a Beauvillier or somebody else, it's going to be because, oh man, they have to trade him. So I wouldn't call that a creative trade. To me, a creative trade is, if there's two moves, you're moving around some money, and all of a sudden you're able to pull off a move as you were suggesting. So, that creativity, I'll believe it when I see it, because we haven't seen that from the Canucks so much.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so if we're talking in hypotheticals here, text in 650. If they attach an asset to move out Braden Holtby, would we call that creative?
Desperate.
Okay, but like it's trying to get the money off the book, and it allows you to do something else down the road. But in theory, we would say creative, but also you're losing that trade because you're admitting defeat on Braden Holtby and you're getting rid of the contract. But we would still understand it. Would you be willing to, quote unquote, lose a Nate Schmidt trade if it meant getting the money off of the books? Now, I'm talking about a hockey trade, but would you downgrade a Nate Schmidt to save $3.5 million in cap so you can spend that $3 million elsewhere or be a haven for a contract elsewhere, whatever it is? Would you be willing to get let's say a number 4 D-man or a 5 D-man for Nate Schmidt just so you have that extra money?
I would do that because cash is king. As of right now, cash is king. And the conversation we had a little bit earlier on, the Florida Panthers buying out Keith Yandel.
Right.
That is so intriguing to me because what do they do with their left side? They got Mackenzie Weegar.
Signed Forsling today.
They got Forsling, right? They've got some other options on their right-hand side. They got a player that Brad Shaw on this very show highlighted in his game, Marcus Nutivara, who's somebody that, got some games last year, played 30-plus games, but wasn't really consistent in that lineup. They were a team that was interested in Nate Schmidt before everything went down and he came to the Canucks last year. So, to your point, is there a deal? And I'm throwing this name out there because it's one that's been mentioned before, but Schmidt for a Nutivara.
Now, straight up, it looks like a loss, and maybe you got to get a pick in there and somewhere, something like that.
But cash is king.
And so what? That saves
$3.25 million the Canucks get saving. So you might lose the better player, but you have money that's freed up. And I would rather do that deal than attaching a sweetener to a Braden Holtby or retaining salary because you're kind of screwing it up for yourself a couple of years down the line with that cost. You're adding a sweetener, you're getting rid of an asset, whereas Nate Schmidt, you got him for a third. And that's fine. You won that deal. The fit did not make sense in Vancouver for the 1 year. And if you do have to move off of him, are you getting a player that fits a little bit better? And from everything we heard about Nutivara, I know there's a lot of folks that have watched him closely over the last few years as well. Kind of that long-range defenseman that, I'm not saying he's an all-star.
I'm a fan. I'll admit, I'm a fan.
But I would rather do that because you are getting a player that's useful in your system that is going to be a better fit. And cash is king. You're making that money back. You're getting it back where you can free up. And guess what? Use that on a winger. Use that on a center that might be able to give you some flexibility. I'm not opposed to that. According to Jim Benning, there is no Nate Schmidt situation. He has not been, asked to be traded. But there are rumblings. We hear the rumors. And if that deal comes across the board, or one like that, with the fit is most important. And the way I look at this roster now, guys, or, Bick, is with Edler, he didn't look good. Travis Green doesn't want to play him next to Quinn Hughes. So where does Nate Schmidt work even for one more year? Because we could say last year was bad, but is that pairing with Edler going to be that much better next year? They just have a style that it doesn't really suit itself. And we watched a lot of hockey last year. We watched every single one of those games. Something looked awry. It didn't look right.
650. This is complete fantasy. Jim Benning, as we know, will run out of time or fall into a black hole. And creative moves are slim and none with the Canucks, and Slim just left town.
So not much confidence there. We got more coming in. We said there's another one. Madden and a second for Toffoli was a creative trade.
No, that was a hockey trade.
How did that work out?
That's a hockey trade.
The problem with that trade was you made it before the pandemic. You thought you were going to be aggressive for probably a couple of years. And then essentially it didn't amount to anything. The ran out of time element, whatever you want to call it. So in theory, it wasn't a creative trade. It was a signal of intent. Guess what happened? The intent never came. It was just a signal, and you kind of were lost there. So I wouldn't call that a creative trade. That was an aggressive move, but it wasn't creative.
No, spot on. That was a pre-pandemic. Cash flow wasn't an issue. You expect the cap to go up. different realities, and we live in this reality, not just with the expansion draft, but flat cap, COVID impacted season,
no revenue coming in whatsoever.
Different revenue streams completely all playing a role into the economic reality that the NHL faces right now, and GMs are trying to solve. But these are the equations that Jim Benning is facing right now over these next 48 hours, where you got to solve how to improve on Cole Lind, Matt Highmore potentially being one of your protected players, and maybe even Olli Juolevi. Now, I know they were happy with the last season. Obviously, COVID hurting his play down the stretch and his availability, but I look at Olli Juolevi and I say, I'm not ready to say he needs to be protected.
No, he ain't there yet.
I'm okay with risking it if it means you make an improvement upon him.
And that's the key here. When you look at these prices paid for an Arvidsson, when you look at these prices paid for a Ryan Graves,
they're not unreasonable.
No, they're not. And that's why upgrading that protection list, I'm not saying both of them, not forward and defense, but you got to hit one. You got to upgrade the roster somehow if these prices are still out there for the Canucks. Just because they're out there for New Jersey and the Kings doesn't necessarily mean they'll be there for everybody, for every single player. But you got to find that deal. The Canucks are desperate in upgrading this roster. They have to. Last year wasn't good enough.
To be fair, this is the price on Thursday. What's the price on Friday? What's the price closer to the roster freeze? As close to the moment when you got to submit your lists. What's the price look like then? Similar to what we saw tonight? Similar to what we saw with Victor Arvidsson? Or will they decrease slightly? Right? And this is the conversation we've had that, this deadline, as much as we wanted moves on Monday and Tuesday and yesterday, this is the time. And Sap put out a tweet, hey, over the next couple of days, keep an eye on what's going on with Vancouver, and maybe something will percolate as we get closer to deadline, because we know deadlines spur action.
Absolutely. We got another text here, unsigned. Guys, we had one of the worst D in the league last year, gave up 30-plus shots per game. Why would we downgrade our D to save $2 million?
First of all, it was $3 million.
3.25.
Yes.
We are watching the dollars. It's
every penny counts right now.
I think down to the cent at this point. Why would you downgrade, in quotation marks? I go back to the fit.
Sure.
Nate Schmidt's a good defenseman. I like Nate Schmidt as a player. In Washington, when he was on that team in that series against Toronto, he was a game changer.
Yep.
He really attacked the Toronto Maple Leafs that year and was key in that series turning around. He was a problem for the Toronto Maple Leafs. In Vegas, it worked. He was playing next to Braden McNabb, and they just had a solid pairing. Washington, he was next to Brooks Orpik for the majority of that time. In Vancouver, he doesn't have that partner, and I don't see that partner coming up at any point, unless the Vancouver Canucks sign a partner for Nate Schmidt. But here's the problem.
They got to sign someone for Quinn Hughes first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So where is that fit for a 29-year-old? Are you willing to wait another year to see if you can bring that player in? I don't know if you can do that. And so that's why you're saying, yes, on paper, Bick, Nate Schmidt is a good player. He's a damn good player.
Yeah.
There's a reason he's making...
Big fan of his. Big fan.
There's a reason he's making 5.9. But on this team, taking a step back, saving some money for a player that is a better fit, does that make more sense? And that's why we're asking the question.
And when you say fit, I think of the four players that the Vancouver Canucks have right now. Quinn Hughes, Jack Rathbone, Tyler Myers, Nate Schmidt. All similar style players. Move the puck, offensively minded, can rush the puck, pass the puck. And of the four, which is probably the most attractive via trade? If you had your choice, you'd probably want to trade Tyler Myers. Contractual value, mistakes, all this sort of stuff. But who's got the most value? It's going to be Nate Schmidt.
Yeah.
And so that's why that name comes up. And we've seen Tyler Myers get used in a matchup role. The Vancouver Canucks need more matchup roles. That's why we talk about fit more than anything. At least on the ice, that's why this stands out. You need more matchup style defenders. The Vancouver Canucks don't have that right now, and that's why we're just talking about do you move Nate Schmidt out to get someone who's better suited to make the pairings. This isn't about just getting the 6 most talented D-men and letting them figure it out. You got to get the right style of guys who complement each other to get the best out of each other. We're talking about Ryan Graves earlier. Ryan Graves isn't a fantastic D-man. He knows his role and knows how to play it well and execute what he needs to do well, but it works with Cale Makar. And Quinn Hughes needs that. And Nate Schmidt was kind of meant to be a Tanev replacement. One guy goes out. But, to some degree, while it's a great acquisition, and it you would hope they got better, it didn't really work, obviously, with Quinn Hughes. It wasn't really given an opportunity also. But he wasn't a candidate to take up that role.
Let me pose this question to you. If you were to make a deal like that where you take an L, maybe it's, for a draft pick even.
With the intention of getting someone else to make up the difference. That's the point.
Yes, getting better in the long term. Are you willing to say, hey, as long as we shed that salary, you can move that money towards maybe getting that partner next to Quinn Hughes, right? Maybe in free agency, you're able to spend that a little bit more because all of a sudden you've freed up 3.25. Like when we talk about creative moves,
yes.
How do you set up that next move that could be a home run?
This is the way to think about it. Do you take an L on a Schmidt trade? Okay, just in our reality here, okay? You mentioned Marcus Nutivara. Do you do that, and does that open up enough money for you to go get Brandon Montour? And so the way I'm looking at it is Montour and Nutivara for Nate Schmidt. Suddenly, you're okay with that. Well, you need the money to be available to get those players. Now, if you don't like Montour and Nutivara, okay, that's fine. Choose your other input, but that's the style of move we're talking about.
We've got AP from Langley texting in 650 on the Dunbar Lumber text line. No to trading Schmidt. He's needed more on this team than the cap savings. This guy's a bona fide top 4D. You guys need to stop.
Well, here's a scenario. It's like the Nate Schmidt situation that's not a situation, but kind of is a situation.
It's complicated. Old school Facebook relationship status, it seems complicated.
I'm with the AP. I would love to retain Nate Schmidt. Big fan of the trade, big fan of the player. But the circumstances are what they are. There's an awkward phase between the two parties, and there's a need for matchup style D-men. Well, how are you going to remedy that without moving anyone out, without moving money out? That's why this has become an issue.
It has, and until this expansion draft passes, until free agency passes, it's still going to be a question because, it's been something that's come up not once, not twice. It's come up in the last couple of months numerous times. So something that, actions speak louder than words. So let's see what happens in the next couple of weeks here. It is the People's Show, and we're gonna talk about Vasily Podkolzin next. Does he need a BFF here in Vancouver? That's next on Sportsnet 650. The final segment of the People's Show. Randy Bick here with you. We got the fill in the blank going as well. People going off on that on Twitter and the text inbox 650, the Dunbar Lumber text inbox. Jim Benning's offseason moves will be blank. It's kind of predictable. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of negative based on some of the history you outlined earlier on in the show. Jim Benning has had a tendency to pay guys that are coming off of career years, that have had coming off a high. And what happens when you have to do that?
Pay top dollar.
Yeah, you're not getting discounts for players like that. And here are some of the fill in the blanks. We got Cole coming in with Jim Benning's offseason moves will be worse than his ex's cooking.
What?
I think Cole is just wanting to vent a little bit, maybe about his previous relationship.
Hope you're doing okay, Cole.
Cole, we're with you here. Others saying Paul is a lot of negative, likely disastrous for the future of the team. Okay.
Well, I mean, to be fair, what reasons do you have to be very optimistic? Because look, I outlined all those moves before have resulted in how many playoff series victories? How many appearances?
2 over 7 years.
Yeah.
So
and once, right? Yeah, 2 series wins if you want to include the Minnesota one.
Okay. Yeah. Fair. The resume speaks for itself.
Yes.
We got Canucks fan 12345 coming in saying Jim Benning's offseason moves will be the Sedins. That is it. So I don't know.
So what, they're going to roster 4 D-men next year?
You got to occupy. You got to fill out a NHL roster and the AHL Canucks. There better be more than the Sedins coming to the organization.
God, I hope so.
And when you say aggressive, you want to be aggressive? I don't think that's all you mean. I think you mean the on-ice product as
It's
well.
aggressively going the wrong way.
Exactly. So keep coming with those fill in the blank answers. 650. Hit us up on Twitter at Sportsnet650. Also, so I kind of talked about this.
Hang on, can I read one more?
Yeah, please.
This one's from Buyout Myers is the Twitter handle. The death of my 30s.
Wow. Got real quick.
That's pretty good though.
The death of my 30s.
Well, like one bad contract. Like if there's another Louis Eriksson contract, 6x6 for Zach Hyman, say. And I think you'll get more value out of Zach Hyman than they did Louis Eriksson. But fair to wonder.
Man, just be careful with those guys. Like, when you are going for a high-end player and it's a superstar, yes, the money is justified because you're going for the best of the best. How often those guys hit free agency? Not often.
Yeah.
But if you're going for a guy that's had a couple of great years, like great team guy, has been putting up points, putting up goals, but there's still a ceiling on his play, you got to be careful. Because that number 6x6, I don't care which, like the Canucks are who we're talking about. We're in this market. I don't care who's paying that money to him. Like
the only team it makes sense to is Toronto. And even then, it's still a bit like, you sure you really want to do that?
Yeah, that's a rough.
And
rough
I get
ride.
it. Like, guys earn their money. Players earn their money. And someone's going to give it to them. That doesn't mean it's a good idea.
Yeah, somebody's going to give it to him.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be your team, though.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It could be another team.
And we had a text earlier. It's, well, if you're giving up $6 million for Zach Hyman, I'd rather just pay $8 million for Landeskog. Yeah, me too. Do the Canucks have $8 million to get Gabriel Landeskog? And even then, does Gabriel Landeskog want to come? Right? And like that's the crux of the issue. It's great in theory. Yeah. Landeskog, here's $8 million. What if he says no? Then what?
We had that's fair. That's a fair question. We had a text earlier on saying, all right, but haven't we learned from the past? Is this just an agent doing his work and it gets out? Of course it is. Of course it is. Just because the Canucks are lumped into this conversation doesn't mean it's going to happen. Leverage is a thing. Getting your name out there. There's going to be interest in Zach Hyman. We all know that. But, just 13 days before free agency, this plays well. We've heard this before with the Tyler Myers, Canucks conversations. Jake Gardiner and the number that was being floated out with Jake Gardiner. Remember, we were talking about 7x7 at some point. We're talking about large money deals. So, yes, that's the game. You got to decipher what is real, what is fake, what is questionable. To me, the Zach Hyman one is questionable. Jaden Schwartz, I'm thinking about that one.
Yeah, and we, heard a couple of wingers today, and it feels like that mold of player, that tough to play against style winger, Landeskog, Saj, Schwartz, Hyman, Coleman, Palmieri, Armia. Like, there's an abundance of those guys. So let someone else get the first tier. I want that next tier guy. And maybe you get a contractual value in that range of player.
Okay, so those are the two wingers that are linked to the Canucks today. Will it happen? Not sure. But one thing is definitely going to happen. Vasily Podkolzin is coming to camp. Jim Benning expecting him in town sometime in August, early August, and expects him to be ready to go for camp. He's an impressive kid. This is something to be excited about. But in that Q&A with Ian McIntyre, I thought Ian asked a great question. Kind of came out of left field. But based on the answer he got from Jim Benning, would the Canucks like to acquire another Russian player to make Podkolzin feel more comfortable and give him a teammate to speak to in his first language? It's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer, here's Jim Benning's response. We talked about that and we're looking at that. I think it would help having another Russian player on the team. We're looking at it and seeing if there's a fit that works either through trades or free agency. We may look to do something like that. Your thoughts on that quote? Because excellent question, excellent follow-up. And Jim Benning, very honest.
Very, very honest. And makes you think of how many Russian players there are across the league. Not as many as you think. A lot of high-profile ones, but like Alex Ovechkin's not coming here, so forget about that one.
You can scratch him off the list.
Nikita Kucherov's not coming here. You can scratch that one. Sergei, no. We can go through the whole list.
Gino Malkin, no.
Yeah.
Not happening.
You start going through it, you really get down to like only a handful. And let me just throw these names by you, okay?
Okay.
Just because we've heard some of their names out there. Evgeny Kuznetsov.
Ooh, man.
His name's out there.
His name is out there.
You
but
can get him.
His name is out there, but so are red flag after red flag.
Hey, look, I'm just trying to pick from a pool of 40 some odd players.
Okay, so
and I got it down to like 5.
What you're telling me is the pool may not be as deep as we think, but Yevgeny Kuznetsov, $7.8 million, making some good money.
It's a huge ticket.
32 points that year that they won the cup.
It's a big risk. Yeah,
damn good player. Is his mind in the game right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one player. That's
Tarasenko. Again, high end, and you have to spend to do it.
Cha-ching.
It feels like this is not the really to go, right? It's depth guys that, get him acclimated to North America and move on. So I'll even just delete Provorov's name off the list. Let's delete Pavel Buchnevic's name off the list. This is the one that stuck out to me. Because not only are we trying to fill the Russian player aspect of it, what's the other thing that we're trying to solve through these next 10 to 15 days? Heft, right? Heft.
Want that size.
Does Artem Anisimov interest you at all? Center. Hey, who would pair well with a winger? A center.
6'4", 200 pounds, big boy.
You want to be friends with the guy. Yeah, you can get a D-man, but does it make more sense to get a center? Hey, by the way, to play third line alongside Vasily Podkolzin. Forget just a Russian player in the room. What about his line mate?
Makes sense when you bring it up that way, but here's the problem I have. He was getting healthy scratched in Ottawa.
Oh, yeah. I'm very aware.
Yeah, he was getting healthy scratched in one of the worst teams in the NHL. Good young core, but they were still bad. That to me is like, all right, I like it in theory. I like the BFF angle, as we want to call it. The search for Vasily's BFF in Vancouver.
No, BRF. Best Russian friend.
Okay, I like it. BRF.
Yeah.
But man, you played 19 games in Ottawa last year. You're getting healthy scratched. Can you hang with the big boys? Is that the quality addition you want in the third or fourth line? I don't think it is.
Okay, but what other Russian players? It's tough to find these guys because again, total skaters in the league right now, I think it's around 40, and you're not getting Andrei Svechnikov, you're not getting Romanov, you're not getting Sergachev. We went through a couple other guys as well. Volkov, is that a name that's interesting you?
I don't think Anaheim's going to give him up. He played well for them.
I agree.
So, okay, we got some...
Zaitsev, he's kind of valued a bit in Ottawa, and also, I'm not sure if that's the guy I really want.
$4.5 million per season. Yeah, that's a little rich for my blood.
You start going through it. It's Panarin's not coming here.
We got some suggestions on the text line. 650. Come
no,
with yours.
We're not reading this one.
We got to read it.
We're not reading.
We're the people show, Beck. Nikita Triumkin.
No, why are we still doing this? It's over. Triumkin's over. We're not doing this.
You know why we read it? So I could get that response from you. That's why we read it. Okay, on the Triumkin...
Mikhail Maltsev, what about him?
I saw this come up on Twitter. I saw people that report on the team bring up the name as well. Here's the problem I have with this even suggestion. I'm not taking it seriously, but here's the problem I have.
I'm not relitigating Triumkin again. Oh, my goodness.
Here's the problem I have. You want Vasily Podkolzin to feel at home with a Russian player?
With the guy who left the country?
Exactly! He wasn't even feeling at home himself here. How is he going to make Vasily Podkolzin feel any better about the city?
Let's use some logic here in this idea.
Doesn't make any sense. Here's another one. Unsigned text. By God, that's Goldobin's music!
Hey, you want a winger who knows the city. There you go. Could happen.
I got another one.
That's great.
By God. We got another one. AK Bar's Kazan legend, former Canuck, Andre Pedant. Okay, we're not going that route. No, we're done with the former Canucks. Don't come up with Burmistrov. Don't come up with anybody else. But all of a sudden, the texts just start coming back. Hey, guys, are you listening? The KHL has a lot of Russian players, apparently.
Okay, but we're talking about trades and free agency. You can't make a trade with the KHL team.
I didn't say it. Jim Benning said it.
Yeah.
Free agency and trades. So we're basically basing it off of that.
Yes.
All right?
Nikita Gusev? Is that something you want to do? Mikhail Grigorenko? I'm telling you, I went through this. Anisimov was the one that, neon sign around it is this one makes some semblance of sense.
Here's the theory I have based on the list that you came up with,
and he's got heft.
Definitely got heft. Here's the theory I have. Rather than signing one of the names you suggested, just teach Elias Pettersson and Nils Höglander Russian, because there ain't no point picking up the players that you mentioned. Ain't happening. Not worth it. I'm not impressed by any of those names. So Elias, you can juggle. You can ride a unicycle.
Yeah.
Niels, you can do the exact same thing. I'm sure they can pick up Russian. There's your BFF or your BRF.
BRF, yeah. Yeah, it's... I like the thinking from Jim Benning of like, hey, how can we make this transition easier for one of our best picks, our best prospect right now, between him and Rathbone, because he hasn't played in the NHL yet. So how do we make this transition easier? Makes all the sense in the world. And it's something that, by and large, Vancouver has ignored, a country that produces a lot of high-end talent. They've kind of ignored it, and now they got Podkolzin. And this is something to think of, to consider, that how do we usher in this player into our market? It's hard to find some names, though.
We've got some realistic ones coming in on the text inbox as well, and I like these, actually.
I swear, if one of them is Pavel Bure.
No, we got, actually, Artem Chubarov's car was a suggestion.
Oh.
I don't know if that's still at Rogers Arena.
That's at least funny.
That's funny. It's not going back to the players. But Yakov Trenin in Nashville, he doesn't have the resume in the NHL.
A lot of Nashville talk the last 2 days.
But he's a guy that they won't be able to protect, right? Based on the list that we've seen. He is 6'2". He's near 200 pounds. He's got a little size to him. He doesn't have the resume yet. But when we talk about finding that next player that may be ready for a breakout, 24 years old, a potential buy low option. That one I don't mind. I think that's a pretty smart pick there.
It's in that mold. You can talk me into it. If there's another piece coming from Nashville, if it was a bigger trade, you could probably talk me into it.
Okay, so you're looking for Ryan Ellis.
I'm going to do everything I can to try to get Ryan Ellis out of Nashville.
Another name that has just come in as well, Kyle and Aldergrove coming with this one, Nikita Zadorov.
Yeah.
Heavy-hitting defenseman.
What's his status with Chicago? Because since the Duncan Keith trade, are they going to hang on to him? Now, we know about Murphy, Stillman, that they're big fans of. It's that third spot that for Chicago is kind of up for grabs. Zadorov is an RFA. And, with Calvin DeHaan, I actually like Calvin DeHaan. It doesn't seem like it's worked out in Chicago completely. But do they just expose him and hope a contract gets taken off? More money for them to go after Seth Jones now that they got Caleb Jones, right? So Zadorov right now, for me, getting protected. And I think they do like him there in Chicago. So an interesting name, but to me, that's a hockey trade that you got to solve.
He's a player that I think intrigues and frustrates teams that fans that he's shown some good things, but he also makes some really, really big mistakes. Sometimes a little too aggressive that costs his team.
You're annoyed with Tyler Myers' defensive play.
Ooh, buddy.
Imagine that imagine a little bit less of that with less offensive upside.
Yeah,
so I think that's what you'd be looking at.
On the Yakov Trenin angle, though,
you might be able to convince me. Actually, you may have convinced me, Texter.
2020-2021, guess what team he was on? SKA St. Petersburg.
Oh.
So while Podkolzin was in that system, Trenin was playing for the main team. So there is a link there as well.
I see you working. So was Lyndon Vey was on that team, was he not?
Yes, he was.
There you go.
Yes, he was. And
Jim Benning needs a reference.
And so,
dial up Lyndon Vey.
And so was Maltsev, the guy that got traded. So all of a sudden, all these guys playing
Mikhail.
for all of these guys playing for.
I've learned way too much about Mikhail Maltsev today.
Yeah, he won't be the BRF that we're talking about. So thanks for texting in on that. We got a lot of interaction on that. 650 in the Dunbar Lumber text line here on the People Show. Randeep and Bick with you for the rest of the week with Sat and Dan off. All right, we got to talk some basketball here because last night, NBA Finals, the Bucks end up winning somehow. I tuned into that game and I was like, all right, this is over. This is going back to Arizona, and the Suns got this.
If you're a fan of shot making in the NBA, last night was not the night for you.
No, you might want to take the night off. But we probably saw one of the most impressive plays, defensive plays in NBA history. Yeah, I'm willing to say that. I think a lot of people are agreeing with that. Giannis Antetokounmpo not only guarding the pass, but also blocking the alley-oop attempt to DeAndre Ayton. Is that the best ever? Is it in that LeBron on Iguodala mold?
I think it's better than that one. Now, the difference is the stakes aren't the same. Now, it's the finals, all that sort of stuff, but that was Game 7, end of the game. It gets exalted in this territory of like, that was a series-defining, championship-defining moment. Script remains to be seen on these next couple of games, but if the Bucks win this series, that deserves to be in that conversation, if not better, because I've watched it 50 times since last night. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I've watched how inch perfect his footwork is, perfectly turns, tracks the ball, gets up, and it still does not make sense to me how a man forced the player to throw up an alley-oop. Good defense. His foot is out. He has 1 foot outside the free throw line. When the ball, when Devin Booker goes to toss it up, Giannis's foot is outside the free throw line. Turns, pivots, like shuttles and jumps, and blocks like at the peak of DeAndre Ayton's jump, blocks the dunk attempt, the oop attempt. It doesn't make sense how he tracked all that space and got vertical at the same time.
There's a reason they call him the Greek Freak, and we're not talking like a Ben Simmons type of play where DeAndre Ayton was going to dunk that. Like, it was going to be a lot, soft. No, Ayton throws down.
Yes.
So he was ready to smash that in, and Giannis makes that quick move, boom, denies him. Even before that in the game, there's a play where he dunks the ball. He picks up the ball at half court.
Oh, the steal.
Yeah. And he doesn't dribble the ball. Like, he's at the rim in a couple of steps. It was unbelievable. Like, when we talk about a level of athlete, he is next level. He's got to hit some of those shots more often, though. But that's pretty special.
But, like, literally every physical trait was on display in that moment. Agility, balance, verticality, power, and the hand-eye coordination. Right? It's one thing to get up to block it. You still got to find the ball. Finds the ball. And just the strength to be able to do that. Unbelievable athlete, but not the most impressive I've seen today. You highlighted this to me today. Yeah.
14-year-old Chinese basketball player Zhang Ziyu. 7'4", 14 years old.
She's crushing it.
You've retweeted the link. If you haven't seen this girl yet, she is unbelievable, and she's dominating. I just feel sorry for the kids.
So she's 14 years old, playing on a Chinese team, and they just won the China Nationals. Now, she's 7'4". They're obviously dominating. And in this clip, she put up 42 points, 25 boards, 6 blocks. Now, you would expect a 7'4" player in basketball to dominate.
Yeah.
It's hilarious next to other kids. Like, she's literally not jumping at all, like, and like not even like raising her arms. To,
no extension, man.
None whatsoever. It is hilarious to watch, but also like talented and skilled. I'll give her credit too here, because it's one thing to just get the ball, turn, and score. She's trying to like do post moves on kids that are coming up to her hip. She's like doing the dream shake, so she's working on the skills. Like, give her credit for that. She's not just taking advantage of her height. She's working, getting low in the block.
Complete domination, though. Have you ever dominated a sport in your illustrious sports career as a U5 or U10 or whatever it was? Any sport, have you dominated even like a fraction of what she does? Because that video is unbelievable. I urge everybody to check it out at Vic Nazar, at Vic650 on Twitter.
I mean,
no, you haven't, Vic. Come on. No,
okay, in U12 leagues, I have. Only because I was the coach.
Oh, okay. That doesn't so you weren't U12. The kids were U12.
Hey, in U12 leagues, when I played, I dominated.
All right. Yeah, no, I did like...
I'm a man! I'm 40!
That was Bick on the field just yelling that over and over again as he was dominating the kids.
Was pretty much... So sometimes you'd coach... Like when I coach basketball, sometimes you plan out a practice and all this sort of stuff, and it's like, hey, it's scrimmage time. There's only 9 kids. You're like, we can't play... Dust it off, and my Bill Murray moment of like, maybe I could be of some service here. And then just swatting everything away.
Rather than passing out of the post, you would just take it to the hole every single time.
How are they going to learn how to defend?
That's
At
true.
some point in your life, you're going to come up against someone bigger than you. I was teaching a life lesson, is what I was doing.
That's awesome.
How do you do, fellow kids?
100%.
All right, so you're the bad cop on this, so that's good. All right, it is the People's Show. Randeep Janda, Bick Nazar. We'll be back tomorrow as well. Hey, golfers, Get great Vancouver golf for less. Go to discountgolfcard.ca for all the details and to order your Vancouver discount golf card today. That is today's show. Thank you very much for joining us today. For producer Joel, Radhaja, Bick, Thank you for listening to The People Show. We'll talk to you tomorrow.